Welcome to OOTO TV, the out-of-the-office investigation from the past into the future of health. This time we're discussing anhedonia and its treatments in depression. I'm Bob.
I'm Sue. And Bob, what a critical topic we're getting into today. We're not just talking about sadness. We're exploring that feeling's opposite, almost, the complete absence of feeling, that deep, profound loss of joy that we call anhedonia. It is a huge challenge for so many people, but the amazing thing, and what we're going to explore, is that the science here is entering a truly new and exciting frontier.
Oh, it absolutely is, Sue. We're really going on a journey today. We're going to start by understanding this mysterious void, and then uncover the really innovative ways that we can start to reclaim pleasure and connection. Honestly, it's a story of hope, and it's all grounded in some incredible research.
This quote from Dr. Reach, wow, it just hits you right in the chest, doesn't it? It perfectly captures the experience. It's not about feeling bad, it's about feeling nothing. It's like the color has been drained from the world, and that feeling of emptiness, that muted quality, it's a huge clue that points us directly to a very specific system in the brain, the reward circuit, which is really going to be the star of our investigation today.
Exactly. So here's our roadmap for today. We've got it broken down into 6 main parts to really guide us through this. First, we'll define that feeling of nothing. Then, we're going to go inside the reward circuit to see what's happening in the brain. After that, we'll look at how you can even measure something so immeasurable. Then, and this is a big one, we'll talk about when old treatments fail. But don't worry, because right after that, we get to the exciting part, the new frontier of treatment. Before we wrap it all up with how you can start building your recovery plan, it's going to be quite the journey.
All right, let's dive right into our first section here, the feeling of nothing. Before we can even begin to talk about solutions or treatments, we have to be crystal clear on what it is we're actually talking about. And the way science understands anhedonia today is way more sophisticated and specific than you might think.
So the word anhedonia literally translates to without pleasure. But what neuroscience is showing us now is that it isn't just one thing. It's not just a switch that's flipped off. Think of it more like a whole factory assembly line for joy that's broken down. It can malfunction at multiple spots. It can be a lack of motivation to even go after something rewarding. It can be a deficit in what scientists call anticipatory pleasure or wanting, that buzz of excitement you feel before a fun event. Then there's the liking part, or consummatory pleasure. That's the actual enjoyment you get during the thing itself. And then finally, it can mess with reinforcement learning, which is your brain's way of stamping a memory and saying, hey, that was good, let's do that again. Anhedonia can be a breakdown in any one or even all of these stages.
I'm Sue. And Bob, that's such a great way to put it. And it's so important to draw another distinction here between anhedonia and a word that sounds similar but is very different, apathy. This is a really common point of confusion, but the sources we looked at are absolutely clear. Here's the difference. With anhedonia, you might still want to see your friends. You recognize it's a good thing to do, but when you actually do it, the experience just falls flat. It's joyless. With apathy, you might lose that desire altogether. You just don't see the point in socializing anymore. So one is a pleasure problem, and the other is a motivation problem. It seems subtle, but for diagnosis and treatment, that difference is everything.
I'm Bob. That is a crucial point, Sue, and if we dig just a little bit deeper, we find that anhedonia itself isn't just one thing. Researchers have broken it down into these 2 main types. First up is social anhedonia. This is when things like a great conversation with a friend, a family dinner, all those moments of human connection, they just feel hollow, empty. Then you've got physical anhedonia, and this is what robs you of the simple, sensory joys of being alive. The smell of brewing coffee, the taste of your favorite meal, the feeling of the warm sun on your skin, that song you used to love. It all just becomes static.
I'm Sue. Okay, so we have a good grasp on what it feels like. But to really get to the bottom of it, we have to pop the hood and look inside. What is actually going on in the brain that causes this incredible loss of joy? And the research all points to one place, a breakdown in one of our most ancient and fundamental neural systems, the brain's reward circuit.
I'm Bob, and this is the part that is just absolutely mind-blowing to me. This reward process, this cycle of anticipation, consummation, and learning,
is the engine behind literally everything we seek out and enjoy. It drives us. Anhedonia is what happens when you throw a wrench in those gears. Your wanting system might be offline, so there's no drive. Your liking system could be down, so even if you do something, the experience is totally empty. Or the learning part fails, so your brain never gets the memo that the experience was even worth it. It's a system with multiple points of failure.
I'm Sue, and this is not some rare or fringe issue. Just look at this chart. The research shows that anhedonia is a cornerstone of major depressive disorder. A staggering 70% of people with MDD experience it. Let that sink in. For the vast majority of people diagnosed with depression, their struggle isn't just about feeling sad. It's about the profound absence of joy. It's a fundamental disruption of the biological systems that are supposed to make us feel motivated and alive. And because it's so widespread and so deeply impacts quality of life, we have to state it plainly. Anhedonia and its treatments in depression significantly impact your health.
You're listening to OOTO-TV with research by author Paul Bulow.
I'm Bob. Okay, so if you're going to treat something this complex, you first have to be able to measure it. And that presents a huge challenge. How on earth do you put a number on a feeling of nothing? How do you quantify an absence? It sounds like a paradox, right? But believe it or not, researchers have come up with some incredibly clever tools to do just that.
To get a handle on this, clinicians have a whole toolkit of specialized scales. You can see some of the key ones here. You've got the workhorse, the SHAPS, which is used all the time in research and mostly looks at that liking component we talked about. But then you have more advanced tools, like the TEPS. Now this one is brilliant because it actually separates wanting from liking, which can help a doctor figure out exactly where in that reward factory the breakdown is happening.
I'm Sue. And that TEPS is so key, Bob, because knowing where the problem is, that changes everything. But I do think we need to add a little bit of caution here. As incredible as these scales are for research and for tracking progress, they're just tools. They're a map. They are not the territory of a person's life. They can help put a number on the problem, which is useful, but they can never, ever fully capture the deep personal reality of living in that state of emptiness.
And that actually brings us to a really critical part of this story, and frankly, a very frustrating one for so many people. We need to talk about what happens when the first line of defense, the standard treatments, just don't work. We're going to look at the known limits of common antidepressants when it comes to anhedonia.
I'm Bob. This is a story that is going to sound painfully familiar to a lot of people out there. You get a diagnosis of depression, you get a prescription for a standard SSRI, and maybe it helps take the edge off the sadness or the anxiety, but that deep feeling of emptiness, that anhedonia, it just doesn't move. And if you felt that, you are not imagining things. The research, as this chart shows, confirms that exact gap. These drugs are often great at targeting negative feelings, but they're much less effective on the positive ones. In fact, some sources suggest they can cause an emotional blunting that can actually make that numbness feel even worse.
I'm Sue, and that right there, that is the absolute key takeaway from this section. A treatment that helps with one set of symptoms, like crying spells or anxiety, might do absolutely nothing for another, like the inability to feel joy. This proves a fundamental point that all the research makes loud and clear: a one-size-fits-all approach is doomed to fail. When you're dealing with something this complex, choosing the type of treatments for anhedonia and depression is critical.
I'm Bob. Okay, and this, Sue, this is where the whole story pivots. This is where it gets so exciting and so hopeful. Because of those exact limitations we just talked about, scientists have been forging a new frontier of therapies. And these aren't just about putting a Band-Aid on sadness. No, these are designed to go right to the source and directly target and even rewire the brain's pleasure and reward circuits. This is a complete paradigm shift.
The evidence is just so promising. I love this table from the Seretti article because it lays it all out. It shows a clear hierarchy of what actually works for anhedonia. Right there at the top, with 3 stars for the strongest evidence, you've got things like agomelatine, vortioxetine, and of course the big one, ketamine. What do they have in common? They work on different brain chemicals, like dopamine and glutamate, which are the real power players in the reward system. And then look way down at the bottom. There are most of the standard SSRIs with just 1 star. The evidence is pretty clear.
I'm Sue.
That's a really stark difference, Bob. And I see transcranial magnetic stimulation, TMS, is also right up there with 3 stars. So how does something like that perform out in the real world?
I'm Bob. The real-world data is just stunning. There was this huge study by Fukuda and their colleagues on people with really tough treatment-resistant depression. Before they started TMS, their average anhedonia score on that SHAPS scale was 8.10. That's solidly in the severe range. Now look at the number on the slide. After TMS, that average score plummeted to 3.06. That is a massive drop. We're talking about moving the average person completely out of the severe category. It's a tangible, life-changing impact.
I'm Sue. That is an incredible improvement. But we do have to ground this a little bit. Even these powerful new frontier treatments aren't magic wands. They have their own risks, they are not available or affordable for everyone, and they absolutely require a personalized plan with a skilled professional. They're not a simple fix.
I'm Bob. That is an absolutely essential point of caution, Sue. And it's exactly why this new frontier isn't just about drugs or machines. It also includes powerful psychological tools like behavioral activation or positive affect therapy. When you start to combine these advanced medical and psychological strategies, the bigger picture becomes so clear. It shows us that targeting anhedonia and depression results in significant impact on mental and physical health.
You're listening to OOTOTV with research by author Paul Bulow.
I'm Sue. Okay, so we've looked at the problem, we've gone deep into the neuroscience, and we've explored this incredible new frontier of treatments. So for our final section, let's bring it all home. Let's turn all this information into an actionable message. Because recovery isn't something that just happens to you. It's about actively building your own personalized plan, literally drawing your own map back to wellness.
I'm Bob. That's a perfect way to frame it, Sue. And the great thing is, the research gives us a really clear framework for drawing that map. It's all about active recovery. It starts with number 1, targeting anhedonia and depression specifically for your needs to build healthy routine and habits. This isn't generic advice, it's about a precision approach. And that approach has to be holistic, which brings us to point 2. Targeting anhedonia and depression requires you to have a health plan, diet and daily eating and sleep routine and process to provide the desired result for health. You can't separate the mind from the body. Then there's that crucial behavioral piece, action before motivation. We'll get back to that. You also see practicing gratitude, and finally, embracing a multimodal approach, combining different tools. When you put this whole toolkit together, you really see how targeting anhedonia and depression exponentially leverages mental and physical health.
I'm Sue. You know, Bob, that action before motivation point is so important. One of the sources had a perfect way of describing it. It said, motivation isn't the fuel you need to start the car. It's a byproduct of the engine already running. You don't wait to feel good to go for a walk. You go for the walk, and that action itself starts to generate the good feeling. It's the whole principle behind behavioral activation therapy.
I'm Bob. It really is the core of it all. And this whole journey we've been on through the research, it completely reframes how we think about pleasure. It's not some passive thing that just happens to us if we're lucky. It's a skill. It's a muscle that we can actually strengthen, a capacity we can build one tiny action at a time.
Which leaves all of us with a final and I think really empowering question. If pleasure is a skill that can be learned, not just a random feeling, what's the first small step you'll take to practice it today?